Hey guys, this is The Constant Show where we talk about movies, and I am Constant, the rambling exoskeleton of Abraham Lincoln. Did you guys know that there is a horror movie about Jack in the Boxes? No, not the fast food, as incredible as that would be. Instead, the children's toy with the do 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 that exists and is a thing. And we're going to talk about it today. We're going to do a full plot summary, and then after that, I'll just give my general thoughts towards the movie, and as sometimes, timestamps are in the comments down below. With this old farmer couple, and the husband is out in the fields with his metal detector, searching for God knows what, and he stumbles across the Jack in the Box. And he finds it in the ground. It's got this combination lock on the top of it that says Jack, and he takes it to his shed, and he opens it, and him and his wife are so fascinated by it. And then he goes inside for presumably a cup of lemonade or something. And then the wife gets dragged in, but we pick up at the end with this claw thing, and she's being pulled into it as the claw thing is off screen. 12 years later. That was the prologue of the movie. You guys weren't even ready. We meet the main character, who looks like a background dancer in a boy band. He's doing the hello thing that they always do in horror movies in this seemingly abandoned museum. Then he gets non-jump scared by Elise, who is the love interest of this movie. And she just kind of walks up and he's like, ah! And she's like, I wasn't trying to scare you, but the music says otherwise. It sounds like a violin being skinned alive. They have a whole meet cute thing where they go in the back and then they look at all these old relics and stuff. And they're like, yeah, we're just gonna throw them away or put them in storage or something, I don't know. He's like, are you sure? Some of these are worth something. And she's like, wow, maybe we should call an appraiser. This is at a museum. Nobody had thought to do that before he had arrived. So then we find out about Rachel, who is the owner of the museum. And she's apparently trigger happy at the moment. She's firing people left and right, which I found to be hilarious, because how many fireable offenses are there at like this Scooby-Doo museum where there's no people? Turns out you only actually meet Rachel whenever you're getting hired or fired. This is the line specifically said by a character, which is interesting because he's getting hired, still hasn't met Rachel. This whole museum's HR department needs some serious reform. When they do the meet cute where they look through the relics and stuff, this is when they discover the Jack in the Box. And it's this ominous looking Rubik's Cube of demon scribbles. So they can't figure out the combination, because the main character can't figure out what it is, because it's clearly not a Jack in the Box. It doesn't have a handle. The combination lock on top of the box turns to spell out Jack as the handle comes out, and he's like, whoa, I guess I was wrong about that one. Also, in Hellraiser, whenever they have the puzzle box and stuff, it's an actual challenge to solve it, or at least they pretend like it is. This Jack in the Box just solves itself. He cranks the handle for this Jack in the Box for an ear-piercingly long amount of time, which is way longer than any of us probably would have invested in it. I give it 2, maybe 3 cranks before I lose interest and I'm on to something else. 2 robbers break in overnight to this museum full of stuff that nobody actually cares about, and they go to steal stuff. One of them comes across the box, and this jigsaw looking puppet pops out of it, and he's like, wow, you're ugly. And he just keeps trash talking this doll to where whenever he gets killed off screen, we just don't even care. And then the other robber, he runs through the building and he hides under this table, and then he gets one of those claws to the face. We still haven't seen the monster, but in this sequence we learn that it apparently has a humanoid form. It's person shaped. Main character and love interest, they go to this diner and they talk. Most of it just circles around him asking her what her 5-year life plan is. She doesn't have one, and he's just kind of roasting her for it. He's just like, oh, you like doing this because you don't like history and you don't really make that much money. Your life kind of sucks. And it causes her to spiral into this almost existential crisis at the diner table. And then she tells him that the reason that she's content with the job and life that she has is because she has to stay at home and work so that she can afford to take care of her sick mom. Good move, hero. Then we get our first glimpse into his dark and mysterious backstory. His fiancée called him in the middle of being murdered and robbed. There's more to the story. Main character comes to the museum in the morning and he realizes that somebody broke into it. And love interest asks him on the phone, hey, is there anything there that's missing? And he's like, nah, not in the front entrance, no. And there's no exhibits there, and he just started yesterday, and he's not even going to do inventory after this. So then we meet the appraiser, and he goes on this long tangent about how originally Jack in the Boxes were this method devised by the French to keep demons inside of boxes, and they would just pop out and do all kinds of demon stuff. And then he starts asking questions about it. And then the appraiser goes, I don't know, man, I just specialize in antiques. Doesn't really coincide that well with his whole speech on demonology. And then he asks him more about it. He's like, well, I do know a guy. So then main character sits by a window napping as this customer wakes him up, and she asks him where this exhibit is. And he's like, hey, I could show you the way. She's like, nah, that's fine. And he goes back to sleep. She goes to the Jack in the Box exhibit where she gets attacked by the Jack in the Box. The thing inside of it hops out, and then it just kind of kills her. Her scream in the middle of getting murdered actually wakes him up from his second nap, which, again, don't know how many fireable offenses actually exist at this museum. Main character does the hello thing in the museum again, looking for the lady perhaps, and then he goes home where he can't sleep. It turns out that he can only actually sleep on the job. He has a very specific and specialized kind of trauma. The main character is going to work the next day, and on his way there he sees a wanted poster with the lady from earlier, which, okay, cool. And he walks away, and then the camera pans over, and there's another wanted poster, but this one is the two robbers, and then they're on the same sheet, which I think is very eco-friendly for these two families to just pool their money and go to Kinko's together. So then main character Googles the demonology expert mentioned by the appraiser earlier, and he finds his website where he has this demon Wikipedia. On demon Wikipedia, it lists Jack's skills and abilities, and one of them is that he has enhanced speed and agility, which this is not a criticism of the movie, but did make me think of this alien demon clown looking guy trying to run the Ninja Warrior course. On the website, it also lists the alien demon clown's aspirations, which I thought was nice. It's like a dating website too. But its goals are to take 6 victims, and then it gets trapped back within the box again. For those doing the math, the 2 robbers plus the lady means that we are already at 3 victims, or 50% of its goal. And this is just within the first 30 minutes of the movie. Also interesting to note that when we watched the scene, me and Vanessa were kind of trying to make guesses as to how many victims it would actually need before it came up. Her method, which surprisingly worked out, was she just went like this, do 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 do, and she was like, yeah, I think it is 6. I did the math and it all lines up. You may ask how they're going to spend the other hour of this movie, considering we're halfway through its goals at the 30-minute mark, and that's a good question. When the main character decides to go on Demon Wikipedia and look up Jack in the Box to see what its deal is, he does it in the same room as the Jack in the Box, which causes the little puppet to turn and look at him like, excuse me? Did you think you were going to get I'm not... You could have gone to a different building. You could have been at that diner where he ruined that girl's life. Rachel shows up, and she tells him that he needs to lock up. She doesn't believe that there was a robbery because there's nothing missing, but the inventory management in this building is just completely skewed. They didn't even realize what they had in the back, and the only reason she thinks nothing was stolen was because he was standing in the lobby and looked around and was like, yeah, it looks fine here, that bottom plate's still here. She thinks this whole thing was caused by him not locking up. So far his work performances, he sleeps on the job. He doesn't lock up. And people disappear while he's working. So then cleaning lady shows up and she wipes down the case, and then she also starts trash talking the doll because nobody can just walk past this thing and then be creeped out by it. They all have to oh man, you're so ugly. At a certain point, I started to wonder if the demon in this movie just had insecurity issues. The doors to the building close because he's a demon ghost clown, and the only route that he leaves her is this staircase where the box is already halfway down, which I thought was cool. You're finally taking advantage of the fact that it's a box. It's normally a still object, and she has to walk around it as the I'm gonna get better at this throughout the video too. Is playing, and then whenever she gets to the very bottom, the ghost clown shows up, and the screen goes to black as she calls out for help. The main character is listening to the recording of his wife being murdered while he's on the job, and love interest walks up and she catches him in the act. And then we get the full backstory for the event, which is he was sleeping, so then he turned off his phone, and then she got murdered. So the cop shows up to question the main character about all the disappearances around town that seem to circle around the museum, even though there's no actual physical evidence that anybody has been kidnapped. And the two robber guys, like, I don't think anybody knew that they were going to rob the place. Unless they did. I mean, I guess it would make sense because they're on the same wanted poster. I can only imagine at the bottom it said, last time seen in two black ski masks. The main character is trying to decide whether or not he should tell the cop that a Jack-in-the-Box is murdering people. He's like, have you ever had anybody say, like, supernatural stuff had happened before? The cop was like, yeah, I've had people say that. They say crazy things like witches and goblins and ghouls and werewolves. But it always turns out to be a murderer in the end. And I thought it was a really good speech and a good performance by that specific actor. And it also like closes off that line of help from the main character early. The main character calls in a favor from one of his friends to look up the owner of the box. Later turns out to be pointless because he just goes into the relic room and then finds the sheet that fell off of it. Main character gets jump scared when looking at an exhibit in a Resident Evil 2 hallway, and then he fails a quick time event as the demon clown just swipes him into the ground and then roars at him as if to say, stay off of my block. The main character relays a bunch of stuff that we already know to the love interest, so now she's in on the loop, but also she thinks he's crazy. The main character goes to the farm to meet the OG farmer from the beginning, the original box owner. They bond over the clown for a little bit, and OG farmer goes on this long tangent about how everybody thought he was guilty of killing his wife, and his lawyer told him that he should accept a plea bargain so that he doesn't go to jail forever, which all just telegraphs the end so obviously that it doesn't make sense for the movie to just tell us this rather than just executing it later. The main character gets into a car and he has a hallucination of his dead fiance who convinces him that it's too early to give up and he has to go back and he has to fight the good fight against the demon. The main character goes back to the museum. He finds the box, puts it in his car, drives it out to the middle of nowhere, and then lights it on fire. And then he goes back to the museum the next day, and as he's fishing around for keys, he sees that the box is in the doorway. It has come back, which is weird, because at the start of the movie, the box was buried underground, no ability to teleport. Maybe it couldn't teleport because the demon isn't out of it. Well, that's a good question, viewer. But that's actually not the case. Once it gets back to the museum, the box is clearly not happy about this whole situation. Jack stalks him through the building, and the main character gets mad, and he's like, if you want to kill somebody, you kill me. And Jack just swipes him down again. He gives him that backhand, and he just roars at him once he's on the ground. Main character gets woken up again by love interest. Rachel and love interest, they meet with the main character to talk to him about his general villain performance lately, how he's mostly sleeping on the job, and then sometimes they discover him just lying on the floor with like claw marks on him. And they tell him, maybe you need a break. And he tries to fight him and tell him about the box, but they don't believe him, and then they put the box in a storage. He gets fired. He goes off to meet the demonology expert, who tells him about this complex ritual involving him stabbing the demon in the heart with a knife and then repeating this phrase in Latin. The main character's like, okay, well, got it, thank you. He doesn't even take notes. There's not a steno pad in sight. The demonology expert tells him that he has to perform the ritual perfectly. If any part of the demon gets outside of the box, the ritual won't work. And the emphasis that the movie puts on this pushes it well beyond foreshadowing into like, this is going to happen. You should probably be listening. The box turns into a grinder, which then devours Rachel, and then her bloody foot is outside in this hallway. Elise, the love interest, has to walk through this building doing the horror movie thing of, hello, where are you? For at least 5 minutes of screen time before she discovers this foot. Why is this the only crime scene like this? Every other scene, that Jack-in-the-Box is clean. He takes the full person every part of him. There isn't a blood splash in sight. The clown is either really bad at hide and seek, or he just really likes to horror movie skulk, because he just kind of walks through like the museum as he's like approaching. Again, out of character for him. Every other kill, he's just on top of it. You get like 30 seconds, and then you're in that box. The last lady, she didn't even make it all the way in the box, is how much of a hurry he was in. But in this one, he's just all shoulder poses. It was like an it fashion show. I'm clearly not a model, but this demon clown, he was strutting his stuff. Main character gets slapped down by the demon clown thing, and he's on the ground, passed out for, I think, the 4th time. And when he wakes up, he like latrine crawls throughout the building, and at one point he gets up when he's on the staircase, and then he starts walking, but then in the next scene he's just crawling again. So I don't know if something like occasionally happens to his legs. I don't even know if that's affiliated with all this demon stuff that's going around, because he got hit in the head. Despite the ritual being like super specific on all of its conditions, he doesn't really fulfill any of them. You have to stab the demon with a blade. But instead of that, he just grabs a fireplace poker and then sticks it right through. And then he doesn't even say the Latin phrase that the movie told us he needed to say. Whenever he stabs the demon clown in the heart, the Jack in the Box is just going all Jumanji, and it's pulling him back in. As it pulls it back in, you can see like one of its talons like sticking out over the side. The box closes and it gets snapped off, and we see that. You may think that this would be a suitable point in the movie. You have like the cliffhanger at its highest point. We don't really know what's going to happen. You could stop now. The main character gets arrested for the murders because they show up on the scene where Elise is passed out and there's a bloody foot in the hallway. Elise goes off to see the demonology expert, who tells her that the only way to stop this is if the box is closed for 15 years, because every time Jack kills somebody, he gets 3 years added to his lifespan. I don't even understand. How long was he buried in the first place? How does this guy know that that's a thing? Why didn't he tell the main character that that was a strategy to take? He tells the main character that if the ritual isn't performed correctly, it will go after its chosen victims. He doesn't include this tidbit when he's talking to one of its chosen victims. So as the main character is in an interrogation scene, looking over the crime scene photos of the foot in the hallway that we had seen earlier, he has a flashback to that moment. He realizes that one of the talons got broken off. He didn't perform the ritual correctly. And the demonology expert just sent love interest off to get the box and seal it up. So what do you know? She gets killed. And then that's the end of the movie. I have really mixed feelings about this one, because on the one hand, I think as far as they came with making a Jack in the Box as a villain, like a competent idea, they knocked it out of the park. I thought this was going to be like way stupider than it was. Don't get me wrong, this is a dumb movie. Structurally, most of the action happens within the first 30 minutes or so. And then on top of that, the villain of the movie is winning the entire time. This isn't like cat and mouse. This is like cat and mouse with like 4 broken legs, and the mouse is also sleeping most of the movie. Main character never even like presents a challenge to it. So it just ends up being like really a sad experience, because you're just like, oh, the demon got exactly what he wanted. The gimmicks of the Jack in the Box actually kill a lot of the tension when you find out everything that's going on. A lot of times in horror movies, the villain will have some kind of obsession with the main character. It gives like a nice dramatic tension. Like on Nightmare on Elm Street, you got Freddy and you got Nancy, and that dynamic creates some interesting moments. But in this one, you find out that the main character is the only one who's immune to the demon puppet clown, because he signed some kind of contract by not figuring out the combination on top. The whole 6 victims thing, it kills a lot of the dramatic tension when you know that no matter what, if it gets 6 victims, it's just done. A lot of like horror movie endings, you want the opposite, you know, like once he gets 6 victims, he's just out of the box forever. That would be like, it would build to something, and then we'd be like, oh no, we gotta stop them. And instead in this movie, it's just like the main character just needs to stop touching stuff, because he is ruining everything. A lot of the information is just given to him. It's not earned. We're still getting exposition in like the final sequences of the movie, the 15-year rule just comes up within the last like 5 to 10 minutes, and I don't even know how to incorporate that into all the other BS that is thrown at me. There's the two robbers, there's the lady who goes to visit the exhibit, there's the cleaning lady, there's Rachel, and then there's Elise, which is 6 people. That means that at the farmer's house, that old lady was killed as a part of another sequence. So there's 5 bodies that we don't even know about that happen somewhere in this universe. I want to know where the backstory is, because that old guy is the one who ends up sending the box. A lot of the storytelling conventions that it used is to make itself feel cohesive don't really add that much depth to the material. For instance, the way it perfectly telegraphs like its twist, even the part with like the claw snapping off. If the audience discovered it at the same time as the main character did, rather than having a focus shot on that specific thing, I think it would have sold better. The twist really only works if you're not paying attention to anything that's happening. Also, I think we should do more horror movie ideas where it's just like, what's the dumbest idea you have? Haunted yo-yo. It's the game of sorry, but it's possessed by demons. The Yahtzee dice are always trying to kill somebody. Don't Scrabble alone. That's been the movie. Those were my thoughts. If you guys have seen it, I would love to know your thoughts. And I will see you sometime in the near future. This has been The Constant Show. I am Constant.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe. We all know what a Jack in the Box sounds like.